Welcome to Life Recovery Today with Stephen Arterburn. In the next half hour, you'll obtain insights and tools to transform your life using the biblical principles found in the 12-step program. We believe everyone can benefit from a life recovery experience because we all have struggles in life. Struggles with addictions, food, depression, anxiety, and relationships, to name a few. You'll be encouraged to see how others have found a new way of life with hope for the future through life recovery. Your host is Steve Arterburn, founder of New Life Ministries and Women of Faith, author of over 100 books, and teaching pastor at Northview Church in Carmel, Indiana, one of the 20 largest churches in America. Steve is the co-editor of the Life Recovery Bible, the #1 selling recovery Bible. With over 3 million copies sold, this is the Bible given to inmates by Prison Fellowship and the Pew Bible for the Salvation Army. Now here's Steve.
Hi there, Steve Arterburn here, and welcome to Life Recovery Today. You know, one of the things we've been saying for a very long time is that recovery is for everybody. When you think about it, it is. Everybody needs a growth plan. Everybody needs a step to go farther, deeper in whatever they're dealing with. And the 12 steps, well, Dave Stoop and I, we integrated the 12 steps right into the Bible where they came from, and we think that's a really great growth plan. If you got a better one, we'll do that, but just don't do anything. Because, as we're going to hear from Jacqui Mack-Harris, the impact isn't just on you. Dr. Jacqui Mack-Harris is going to talk to us about how addiction, well, it has a lifespan longer than the person who struggles with it. So she's going to help us understand this generational dysfunction and how it impacts your life and how it could be if you would join a recovery group. Well, in Exodus 20, the 5th verse, I'll read it out of Life Recovery Bible. If you don't have one of these, you call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE. God says this, I lay the sins of the parents upon their children. The entire family is affected, even children in the 3rd and 4th generations of those who reject me. But I lavish unfailing love for 1,000 generations on those who love me and obey my commandments. The good news is that we can be the transitional generation. So, as you begin this journey of understanding your story, where you've come from, things you've been involved with, you might discover some things that trigger you, that cause you to react. And if I'm triggered into something, well, that doesn't mean that I'm not recovering or I haven't forgiven, something like that. But what it does mean is there's some work to be done. Sometimes those triggers are based on a wound or a trauma. And if I don't resolve those, whether I'm an addict or not, there's a good chance I'm going to pass the impact of those right down to my kids, and that's going to impact their kids. It just makes sense. But Jacqui Mack-Harris, she's been studying this for a long time. She's going to give us some great insight. I hope that today, that when you're finished with Life Recovery Today, you're going to be curious. You're going to go deeper into what you've been through or what you're going through. Because see, we want you to get through things. We want you to get over things. Here's the key. We want you to get beyond them so you're not dragging that pain through your life. So here's Jacqui Mack-Harris, Dr. Jacqui Mack-Harris. Let's give her a listen.
Hi, my name is Dr. Jacqui Mack-Harris. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I am also one of the co-hosts of New Life Live Radio. And today I'm going to be talking to you about how recovery is impacted by family systems and how trauma and generational dysfunction show up in families, and also how we can mitigate that, how we can reduce some of the effects of that. So family system. The family system can be the mom, dad, kids, grandparents. Our family systems can be different components, right? We can have different characters show up in our family systems. And the system is what you are doing what doing life in, or where school can be a system, church can be a system, your job is a system. So our family system is the people who we're doing life with. And that might look different for everybody. You might have a single parent home, you might have two parents, you might have parents who aren't married, you might have grandparents raising kids. So just know that there can be multiple configurations for a family system. And then we have our immediate family, and then we also have the extended family. And so some family systems also include aunties and uncles and grandparents. And in some cultures, our family system extends out to chosen others, right? So I have a sister who I met in college. We're not biologically related, but we met in college. Everyone thought we were related, and we raised our families together. We just really kind of sunk in together. And so we say we're sisters, even though biologically we're not. But we have lived together and done life together for the past 25 plus years. And so for me, in my culture, she's family. My kids call her auntie. They call her dad, her husband, uncle. Her kids call my mom and dad grandparent. And so this is our family system. And interestingly enough, our family systems were similar in terms of the types of trauma that we had experienced in our families. And we see how that all impacts us by how dysfunction shows up in the family system. And trauma can be an experience that you've had, or an experience that you've witnessed, or an experience you've been told about. And so if it's something you have been told about, it's something we call vicarious trauma. And we can have stories in our family system that can be traumatic, that can be really hard to hear. Interestingly, though, often we don't tell the actual stories in our family system. We use television and movies and books and stories outside of our system, outside of ourselves, to try to teach our families our values and the morals and how to do life. That works sometimes, and sometimes not so much. But when we think about trauma, sometimes we don't realize an experience we've had was traumatic. Sometimes the trauma isn't even something that has happened in our generation. I study generational trauma and generational transmission of family dysfunction. And what we learn is that oftentimes the trauma has been something that happened generations past. And when the trauma happens, we begin to deal with life and society in a certain way. It becomes the family's rules, the family's traditions, the family's rituals. So say, for instance, a woman is attacked or raped, and she survives that, and she seems to overcome that. She has a family, she's married, and now she is going to teach her children to behave in a certain way based on that traumatic experience that she had, right? So maybe she might be mistrustful, she might be more protective of them, she might be hypervigilant in some ways that they don't understand. We have some sayings, some things we believe, right? So family trauma, and in my family, the women had so many negative experiences with men that the message became all men are dogs. You can't trust a man. And so it made it really hard to be married as a young woman, because in the back of my mind, he was gonna leave. And I needed to be prepared for him to leave, because all men are dogs. They're gonna do you wrong, and you need to be prepared to take care of yourself. That began to be a message in my mind that one day my husband said, I'm not all men. And I was wondering, what are you talking about? And he said, you say all men are dogs. And I didn't even realize that was something I would say out loud. But it was something that I'd said out loud and had actually conveyed in my actions to him, that I believed that. So much so that one day in a marriage ministry class, my husband said, yeah, we've been married like almost 25 years and she still hasn't unpacked emotionally. So the dysfunction was that I was emotionally avoidant and unable to be intimately connected to my husband in an honest and authentic way, because I didn't trust that he was actually going to stick around. You know what this does? It could really lead to creating my own worst nightmare, because if I can't connect with him and he feels not needed, he feels not trusted, he feels unloved, he may very well leave the marriage. And then what do I say? See, all men are dogs. No, I missed an opportunity to connect and I left him out and he couldn't tolerate that. So what we ended up doing was therapy. I did therapy and I learned how to be present with myself. I learned how to be present for my loved ones. I began to do the work to get healthy so that rather than handing down generational dysfunction, I can hand down generational wellness. Unfortunately, I didn't do this work until my children were already nearly adults. And I've actually transmitted the same message that my aunts and grandparents transmitted to me. And I've heard my daughters say, yeah, all men are dogs. Get them before they get you. And unfortunately, that impacts the way that they view men. But because we can be open and honest and talk about these things and we can recognize that those are lies, there's not truth in that. There was an experience that someone in past generations had, and their hurt caused them to make statements about men that would prevent future generations from being hurt. They might have meant well. Unfortunately, what it's done is prevented future generations from having successful love relationships. And so we're doing our work in this generation to reset our family system. We want our family system to be one that we show up honestly and in our integrity, that we have generous assumptions about other people, and that we are clear and open and honest about our boundaries. And so people know my expectations, and if they know my expectations, then they have an opportunity to meet those expectations or to negotiate some other terms, right? If I have expectations from my husband that are beyond what he is interested in meeting or capable of meeting, now he has room and an opportunity to share back with me what his needs are and what he is able to give me. And so it's really important for us and our family to be open and honest about our needs, our expectations, to not hold people tied to our expectations, and whether that's negative or positive. Because of these old negative messages that we have, sometimes we have negative expectations of people and we push them in certain ways and treat them as though they're behaving according to our expectations or our negative thinking, even if that's not true for them. And so we are learning to be more honest about our own personal thinking. So I am going to take responsibility for what I say. I am going to take responsibility for being honest and open with others, and so they have the information they need, right? If I'm being clear with them and being honest with them, that is a kindness. And these aren't things that I learned how to do in a family that was really geared towards self-protection, which is holding yourself back, being really strong, not showing emotion, not necessarily showing up for others with emotion, but just being busy and doing and producing and accomplishing. And that was how I learned to feel loved. If I accomplished something, that feeling of accomplishment was the thing that I would get. And that's not enough. It's not enough because we were created for relationship. And no matter how much I accomplished, it never helped me be more intimately connected with my husband. What helped me become more intimately connected with my husband was acknowledging the family trauma, acknowledging how the abandonment and the loss of generations of men in the home had impacted our present relationships. I had to acknowledge that. And I had to be honest about that. And so now the story we tell is the truth, and we look at the truth of our history, and we decide what parts of that we need to change going forward, and then we do that work. And that's not always easy, but it is absolutely necessary. And so just because your family has experienced trauma doesn't mean that that trauma needs to be a everyday experience going forward into future generations. It doesn't need to continue to leave its mark. We need to take that traumatic experience out of our current traditions and rituals, but we cannot do that if we won't even acknowledge the trauma. Our history matters, and if we don't know our history, we are bound to repeat it. And so I hope that you are able to take a look at the trauma in your own family and get into recovery so that instead of handing down generational dysfunction, you will be able to hand down generational wellness.
Are you going through your struggles alone? Do you want someone to talk to help you through your pain? Do you feel like a failure when you relapse again, telling yourself, next time will be different? Don't walk this path alone anymore. Join a life recovery group today and be a person that your friends and family can be proud of. God created us to be in community, and we believe everyone can benefit from a life recovery experience. There are life recovery groups all over the country, and if there isn't one in your area, we can help you start one. Life Recovery brings recovery to you, right where you are. You'll take a journey with others to find healing and freedom. Whether you're looking to join a group or start one, New Life Ministries is here for you. Call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE or visit liferecoverytoday.net.
Welcome back. I hope that something Dr. Jacqui Mack-Harris has said has resonated with you in your family situation. But right now, we're going to listen to her. We're going to learn more about the trauma and triggers and how we can get help. And we can get the help that helps us and have a better connection with all of our loved ones. And then, guess what? It really does impact generation after generation. Here's Dr. Jacqui Mack-Harris.
Hi, my name is Dr. Jacqui Mack-Harris. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm one of the co-hosts here at New Life Live Radio. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about trauma triggers. And we hear the word trigger often, and I'm not sure people always know exactly what that means. And so the way that I think about triggers is it's something has happened to spark a memory. This memory might be a physiological memory, meaning that it's body memory. You know how you learn to do something, you do it so many times, you have muscle memory, right? Experiences can cause us to form memories in our body. It could be an emotional memory where there's a feeling that is reminiscent of something else. I think we have all had those moments where we feel like, wow, I feel like I've done this before, I've been here before. You may be riding in the car and hear a song on the radio and it might cause you to tear up and you're like, wow, why am I so sad all of a sudden? Or you smell something and it reminds you of something else. This is why often if you're going to view homes during open houses, there might be cookies baking or the fireplace on, because then it smells like home and people want to buy the place that makes them feel like this is their home. And so triggers are that spark that makes you feel a particular way. And trauma triggers are anything that brings you back into that physiological or emotional state you were in when you experienced the trauma in the first place. Now, again, this can be sight, sound, smell. Think of your senses, right? You might see something, hear something, smell something, taste something, feel something, and it could trigger you back to that past experience. You also may be present with someone relationally, and they might be the trigger. So I do a lot of couples therapy, and I have learned that there are things that if I only have one person in the room with me, if I don't have both parties present, there are things I may never see because the partner is the trigger. All right, it's this partner, the way that they do a particular thing, the way that they respond, they're huffing or sighing, or they roll their eyes, or they move their head in a certain way. All these things can trigger a trauma response. The brain has a part that the amygdala, the hippocampus, the part that houses memory and emotion. that doesn't have a date timestamp on it. And so you may have an experience and physiologically remember it. Yeah, your body remembers it, but you don't have a story to tell around it. There's no pictures, right? And so we call that an implicit memory, the one with no date timestamp. There's a sensation, you hear a song, you start to cry, you're confused, you don't know why that happened. Explicit memories would be the memories in which you have a date, you have a time, you have a story. You know, I was 6 years old, I had on my red dress, we went to the beach. It's explicit. I have details, I can tell the story. With trauma, we often want to forget. And so we may put it out of our mind, or our mind may be protecting us and it may shut down and not remember certain things. Often people who are traumatized will disassociate, especially if it's repeated. And so someone who's in a situation where they're being repeatedly assaulted or taken advantage of, or maybe in a war zone, right? They're in combat. There is this repeated occurrence of the traumatic experience. And so the body learns that when this happens, right? So if this, then that. When we experience a trauma trigger in our present day, oftentimes we don't know that that's what's happening, and we believe that the culprit is whatever is in front of us. And so, for example, I grew up in a home with an alcoholic father who at times was violent, and so there was domestic violence. And he would yell and scream, they would argue. And so fast forward, I marry someone who's in the Marine Corps, who grew up in a large family. And in his family, if you weren't the loudest person, you might not be heard. So he's a pretty loud guy, and he's a Marine. So he can be loud and forceful. My body, my nervous system cannot tell the difference between him just being him and being loud and forceful, not angry, not violent, not attacking, but loud and forceful in his voice. My body doesn't know the difference between that and anger and violence. It sounds the same. And so I have a reaction to him just trying to be heard. And then what do? I do what I would do to protect myself. I shut down. In my marriage, this is problematic because my partner needs me to actually connect with him, because he grew up in a family where if you didn't get real loud, you might not be heard. So he felt unseen and not known often. There's a sense of abandonment in there. And so my shutting down when he got loud would cause him to get louder, because that's his trauma response. And he would get louder and I would shut down more. And so we both realize now that we have to be mindful of our own trauma experiences and how they show up in our interactions. And we then are responsible for ourselves in those conversations. And so I recognize that he's upset about something and he's just passionately telling me this thing he's upset about. I'm not in danger. He means me no harm. So I have to talk to my own nervous system and get myself to stay engaged in this conversation and not fight. Right? When I get triggered, my fight, flight, freeze response kicks in and I flight. I might still be standing in front of you, but I can disassociate in the blink of an eye. And so and my husband can tell. He has said, I'm really good at being present in a room while not being there at all. So I can disassociate, but he feels it. He feels me check out. And so his job is now, instead of getting louder when that happens, is to realize I overwhelmed her. He can see me trying to stay engaged, but he also knows because of my trauma, that's really hard for me to do. So his care for me says, okay, Rob, take it down a notch. She can't hear you. And so he has learned to take it down a notch. He has learned to say things with more of a smile in his voice. He's learned to use more words. Hey, look, I'm not mad at you, but I really need to talk this out. Okay, let's talk it out. Something about that startup helps me to remember this isn't about me. When I can remember it's not about me, I'm much better in the conversation. And so take some time to get to know your own trauma triggers. And if you find yourself in a situation where you have been triggered, then you can take a step back and ask yourself what you're feeling and locate it in your body and try to understand why you feel that way and then figure out what you need. Because the more you do this, the more you are moving through your trauma. You're working through it. You're acknowledging that something is happening in your body. And another good question to ask yourself is, when have I felt this way before? Have I ever felt this way at any other time? Is there a time in my childhood where maybe this came up and I felt like this? And that can be the beginning of really great work. And it would be helpful to take that work and meet with a counselor who could help you dig a little deeper and get a better understanding of your traumas and what triggers you, and also help you to learn some coping mechanisms so that you're not easily triggered, and then also help you to work through the traumatic aspects of your history and figure out what you want to be different so that you're not carrying that into future generations. You're not passing that down to your children. So give us a call here at New Life. The number is 1-800-639-5433. We would love to help you find someone to work with. Thanks.
Hey, thank you for joining us today. I thank Jacqui Mack-Harris for all of her great information. I'm really hoping that something that was said here is going to help you in your recovery. You know, too many times the past is affecting our present and future. People say, don't dig up the past. Well, if it's impacting the present, you need to do something about it. Well, there is help, and we can help you get on that path to recovery. It's possible to heal and experience a transformed life and be that transitional generation. If you want help, well, you just call us today. And one of the first things you might want to ask about, how do I get a Life Recovery Bible? Because here all of the steps are integrated into the scriptural principles upon which they were founded. And there's a workbook that goes with it that can really help you work the steps, as well as just read them. 1-800-NEW-LIFE has at the end of it so many people that wake up in the morning and they just want to help somebody get better or change their life. So please call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE. In the meantime, maybe it would be a great time to ask yourself, what am I passing on to my kids that they may be passing on to the next generation? And what could I do to change that? We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Thanks for joining us for Life Recovery Today with Stephen Arterburn. We hope this program has helped you integrate God's truth and wisdom into your recovery journey. This program is brought to you by New Life Ministries, and it's your support that keeps this program on the air. When you contact us for any reason, be sure to let us know that you watch on NRB. Call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE or go to liferecoverytoday.net. Please join us again next week for more Life Recovery Today.